Red button down.
How's that?
To all
That
of
is
those
better.
of you who are at the head table, red button
I think
down.
I would know that by now. Okay, well, good morning, council members. Thank you very much for having us up here this morning. What I thought I would do first is just a quick run-through of how we're going to run this presentation this morning and then move on from there with the information. So what I'll do is introduce the item, obviously, introduce my fellow presenters up here. I'd like to run through just some background information and just a quick summary of some of the key milestones and processes we've undergone since December of last year that are related to this project specifically. And then I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Bill Hinesley to do a brief PowerPoint presentation that will give you some more details about the project and our approach. And then, as you know, this is an action item, so I'll take the reins back after that and we'll walk through the staff's recommendation for the action. And then I will wrap it up with some next steps, and obviously we will be happy to entertain any questions the council members may have. And then we'll go from there. So very quickly, let me introduce everybody up here at the table. You got to meet Mr. William Hinesley yesterday during the BDCP presentation, and he is an associate vice president with ARCADIS, and he is in their national water management group. He will be the principal in charge of this particular project, the prioritizing state investments in Delta levees. And next to him is Miss Leslie Moulton, who is with Environmental Science Associates, or ESA. She's a senior vice president, and she is one of their water practice leaders. Hopefully I got that correct. And Leslie will be spearheading our CEQA compliance tasks that fall under this project. And then next to her is Mr. Brian Boxer, who is also with ESA. He's a vice president with ESA and a community development practice leader. And Mr. Boxer will be spearheading our public outreach and stakeholder engagement tasks for this project. So just a quick note, and I'm going to probably slip into calling Mr. Hinesley Bill because we have worked together for the last year or so bear with me, we'll get a little informal. Bill's going to do the bulk of the PowerPoint presentation, or actually he's going to do the entire PowerPoint presentation, but we've asked Leslie and Brian to join us up here for questions and that may come up around the other tasks that they're in charge of. So what I'd like to do now is just very quickly go through some background information just to kind of set the stage again for this particular effort. And to remind everyone that this effort to prioritize state investments in Delta levees is just one element in a more comprehensive strategy for reducing risk to people, to property, and to state interests in the Delta. And the overall strategy is comprised of and informed by many elements, including statutory requirements, including the Delta Plan and its policies and recommendations, and also other ongoing key efforts that local agencies and state agencies have been undertaking or are getting ready to undertake. And I'll run through some of these very quickly. So as you're aware, the statutory requirements that have led us here today to undertake this particular project come out of the Delta Reform Act. And they include both Water Code Section 85305A, which states that the Delta Plan shall attempt to reduce risks to people, property, and state interests in the Delta by promoting effective emergency preparedness, appropriate land uses, and strategic levee investments. Also, part of the Delta Reform Act is Water Code Section 85306, which states that the Council, in consultation with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, shall recommend in the Delta Plan priorities for state investments in levee operation, maintenance, and improvements in the Delta, including both levees that are part of the State Plan of Flood Control and non-project levees. So the Delta Plan itself obviously contains quite a few recommendations and policies that are specific to this levee and investment prioritization project, including the policy numbered RRP1. I'm sorry, let me back up a minute. Let me start with the recommendation, RRR4, which is titled Actions for Prioritization of State Investment in Delta Levees. So essentially, this recommendation instructs the Council itself, in consultation with Department of Water Resources, the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, the Delta Protection Commission, local agencies, and the California Water Commission to implement Water Code Section 85306 by developing funding priorities for state investments in Delta levees. This recommendation provides some guidance on the actions that we are to take, the type of analyses, and the methodologies to be developed. And it also has guidelines for the deliverables that need to be produced and available for the public in a public forum. Until we are through with developing the updated priorities and adopting those pursuant to Water Code Section 85306, the Delta Plan also has a policy, which is number RRP1, that's titled Prioritization of State Investments in Delta Levees and Risk Reduction. And this policy provides interim priorities to guide discretionary state investments in Delta flood risk management. So until we are through this project and have our recommendations for prioritizing state investments, we do have interim priorities that are part of the Delta Plan. So very quickly, there are also quite a few other recommendations and policies, both in Chapter 7, our risk reduction chapter, as well as Chapter 5, our Delta is Placed chapter, that address the statutory requirements that feed into this more comprehensive strategy for risk reduction. And I don't think I'll run through these in great detail, but just to offer a few examples, because I think there's about 10 of them on my list here. But from Chapter 7, we have some recommendations that involve implementing emergency preparedness and response activities. We have recommendations that call for financing or proposing to finance local flood management activities, funding actions to protect infrastructure from flooding and natural disasters, designating additional floodways within and upstream of the Delta, requiring adequate level of flood insurance for residences, businesses, and industries in flood-prone areas. And lastly, there's a recommendation in Chapter 7 regarding limiting the state's potential flood liability. We also have several policies that have to do with land use measures as they relate to risk reduction in the Delta, including requiring flood protection for residential development in rural areas, as well as locating new urban development wisely within regions of the Delta. So a very quick summary of a myriad of actions and recommendations in the Delta Plan that cover these particular topic areas. And then lastly, I wanted to just quickly go through a list of the other key activities that I mentioned that other agencies are undertaking that include elements of prioritizing state investments in Delta levees, that prioritize this effort, that bring focus to it. And these other activities and plans include the California Water Action Plan, which includes a recommendation and prioritizes this effort along with the Delta Protection Commission's feasibility study looking at a Delta Flood Risk Management Assessment District. Speaking of that, we have been working very closely with Eric Fink at the Delta Protection Commission as they start to embark on their feasibility study for a risk management assessment district. The Department of Water Resources that we've also been working very closely with last September released an updated version of their Flood Safe, a framework for Department of Water Resources integrated flood management investments in the Delta and Sassoon Marsh. And then lastly, staff here have been engaging in and monitoring all of the activities around the update of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board's strategic plan. They'll be doing an update in 2017. There are some regional efforts going on right now that'll feed up into more of a basin-wide level effort, and then ultimately these will inform the updated plan in 2017. So all of these plans, these activities, we are engaging in, we are monitoring. They all in some fashion overlap with the project that we will be undertaking. And so I just wanted to kind of paint that picture today that it is definitely an integrated effort. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears quite a bit here, and what I'd like to do is run through sort of the history piece since last December of activities that staff have been involved in, that the council has engaged in, that are focused on contracting and those processes that have brought us to the point where I have ARCADIS and ESA sitting here with me as our technical team. And this also sets the stage for the action item. So just some reminders about where we've been with this. Last December at the council meeting, staff asked the council to delegate authority to the executive officer to allow us to enter into an interagency agreement with Department of Water Resources. And in the dollar amount of $2 million. The interagency agreement, the funding provided through that was to help secure technical services to assist council staff in undertaking this project. So council did delegate the authority. The interagency agreement was put in place mid-January. And at that same December meeting, council members directed staff to make sure that we undertook a very rigorous process in selecting our technical team to assist us. And so the staff took that to heart, and what we did was we developed what's called a request for proposal package, which is the state version of how, one of the mechanisms by which you can solicit proposals. And we published the package on February 25th. We received multiple bids, and then we went through a very rigorous screening and evaluation process, including obviously looking at the proposals that came in and the documents, ensuring everything was there, accurate, complete. We utilized a selection panel made up of staff from the Delta Stewardship Council, from Delta Protection Commission, and DWR to review the technical proposals, the team member qualifications. We set up a very extensive predetermined scoring system by which the selection panel members ran through the proposals, ran through the qualifications, were able to rank the various teams. And then we asked the selection panel to help us with an interview/presentation process by which we brought the three teams, proposing teams in. They did presentations. We were able to ask questions and have back and forth. And then we did some scoring of the teams after that as well. And then lastly, we looked at the cost proposals and had a formula for ranking those from lowest bidder and then up from there. So on April 22nd of this year, we announced our intent to award. We went through this process. We came up with our lead team, and we announced our intent to award the contract to ARCADIS. And really, I have to say, through the whole ranking process, they came out very high for a variety of reasons. They had a very innovative, progressive approach to the project. They have a very strong team, and this came across really well in the interview process. And they had a very sound work plan. And that's the kind of information that Bill's going to provide to you as he walks through his PowerPoint presentation. So, and I know at the April Council meeting, our Chief Deputy, Dan Ray, also made the announcement there as well and ran the council members through some of this information. So I wanted to run through that because it brings us to today's meeting in which we will be asking the council to once again delegate authority to our executive officer to enter into the contract with ARCADIS. But I'll maybe hold off on that until you guys have had a chance to hear the presentation and get all of the information. So I think with that, I might just say one more thing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bill. I really wanted to take this opportunity, since I have the microphone, to maybe share a little bit about the staff's vision for this project. As you know, even though we haven't officially embarked on this, staff have been working on this scope of work for over a year. We've had various discussions and presentations before the council. We've been talking to partner agencies, hearing from stakeholders. And our vision for this project is that it's one that is very, the process itself is very transparent, it's very inclusive. We want the product that comes out of this, our recommendations, to be well informed from a variety of different viewpoints and to be credible. We know consensus is probably not a word that we're going to maybe look at, but we definitely felt very strongly about how the process would be undertaken and how the products would be viewed. And in going through the process of reading the proposals and hearing from the different firms, we felt strongly that ARCADIS understood our vision and really hit the mark with it. And I think you'll see that as Bill walks through his PowerPoint presentation. So I think with that, I might turn it over to you. And
Cindy, I
yes.
have one more question
sure.
on the vision.
Mm-hmm.
If this project is implemented and it is successful, what changes do you envision occurring as a result of this?
I think just from my own experience, I think one of the biggest changes is probably much tighter coordination between the Stewardship Council, DWR and their program, the Central Valley Flood Board and their programs, the local agencies, the RDs and their programs. I think now, the different entities are undertaking their various programs. They're looking at different investment strategies. We're talking to each other, but it's not coordinated. It's still sort of siloed, for lack of a better word. But I think that's part of the vision that I see, is that we will be working, we'll all be better informed, and we'll be working as a more unified entity with some common goals. So.
Good morning.
Okay.